Star Wars vans and vans that are Star Wars.
All kids love log.
'Tis the podcast log
Yes, log.
of the Star Wars Collector's Archive blog. Oh.
Yes, log.
Whenever the Star Wars Collector's Archive publishes a new blog, this podcast.
I went to hit record and instead I hit hang up. But now I'm recording. Steve, you there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Ron, are you here? I think Ron's going to join us. This is our blog pod. We don't have any introduction.
It's just the 17th one. That's all we can say. Inside, is it?
Hello?
See it. Hey.
Okay. Hey, Ron. So I'm recording now. I went to go record and I hit the hang up button instead.
Nice job. Your trademark is stupidity, by the way.
Yes, it is. It's funny because on my YouTube channel I have a similar one. I just say my ignorance is profound, but I think I should just make it my trademark is stupidity. You may hear some
that's
sound.
not nearly as good a quote, dude. That's like comparing Shakespeare to, like, I don't know.
Mr. T.
What's that?
It's like comparing Shakespeare to Mr. T.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. But Mr. T in that case is Shakespeare. I mean, he's the Shakespeare component in that particular comparison. So
True.
Speaking of which, and we're not going to get Gargan Largan, but have you ever seen Mr. T tell the story of Romeo and Juliet?
I haven't. It sounds magnificent, though.
Yeah, so he's there, and he's it's that show, you be somebody or be somebody's fool. It's his like 80s public service announcement. And he's telling the story to these kids, and he's trying to make it sound like he's making the story up. And so he's like, there are these kids called the Mighty Midgets. And the Mighty Midgets, and he goes on and on. At the very end, he goes, I didn't make up that story. That story was written by Shakespeare. Like, the way he says William is just Shakespeare. You have to track it.
And it was written by this English guy named William Shakespeare.
That English dude? I thought he only wrote old-time stories.
Named William Shakespeare. Named William Shakespeare.
He is. And Steve, don't worry, I'm going to get this back on track.
And he had a van, so it totally ties into our topic.
See, there you go.
Exactly. Mr. T was a relic of his decade and had a van. And we're going to be talking about just so much about vans. The primary mystery that Steve wants to solve. Steve, what is the mystery you want to solve?
Who is Mr. Van?
Mr. Van. And we're not talking about my son's history teacher, Mr. Levan. He's a French version. Who is Mr. Van? Who is Mr. Van, Ron?
Oh, I don't know. I've never heard of Mr. Van until this whole topic that is the subject of the blog post came up. But I would just, guessing based on the evidence at hand, Mr. Van was a company and perhaps also an actual man in the 70s that made custom vans for people who wanted custom vans.
Okay, so how does this all tie into your amazing article, Ron? This one, not only did I actually read it before the show, I really read it. Like, I read it very carefully. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't read it, go to it now. It's on the June 16th Star Wars Collector's Archive blog. Just, how do you set this whole thing up, Ron? How do we even begin to understand Mr. Van?
Begin to understand Mr. Van.
And just the importance of vans in general. Because you've already come on the show to talk about vans. But what is it? What do vans mean?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of like in the 70s. The 70s is like one of my favorite decades, right? So, in a number of ways. But one of the trends in the late 70s was for custom vans, which, a van being... they still make vans, but I think now they're mostly used by, like, hotels to shuttle people to the airport and stuff like that. At my job, we use vans to drive people around to various locations. But I don't know if that many people own vans. They've kind of been replaced by the SUV or the minivan was a thing for a while. But in the 70s, you could buy a van and then just deck it out, customize it to your flavor, I guess, just as like a statement of your personal style.
Right.
And people trick these things out on the interior with like shag carpeting and TVs, which doesn't sound so high tech now that A lot of cars have built-in flat screens, but back then having a TV in your automobile.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ron, there's no way that the vans you're driving for work now have water beds in them. So
No, yeah, water beds or whatever you wanted, really, like anything you want to put in your custom van. And the idea was that, I don't know, man, if you're just like a player and you're cruising around town and you just want to pick up some fine ladies in your car, you can just have a party like right in your van without even going to your fancy bachelor pad. And there was like a thing, probably 3 or 4 years in the 70s, and obviously there are whole companies, including Mr. Van, that sprang up to service this need. Around the same time as disco and CB radios was another big thing, and Star Wars was at that same time, so kind of tied into all those different trends in the 70s. And then, as far as I could tell, just disappeared in the 80s. I think it just went away.
So I've been thinking about this ever since I read your article. First of all, I mean, the amount of things that are great about vans. Like, you have airbrush artists who are being employed at a record rate. You have, custom, all these people who work on inside custom work, lots of great, interesting, creative work for people doing the insides of these vans. I think what must have happened, Ron, is the sexual possibilities of vans must have been overused by people who preyed on children, to the point where vans just became synonymous with stranger danger. Because I'm a couple years younger than you, Ron, and Steve is a couple decades younger than you. But I can tell you that by the time I was like 7 or 8, there was not, like, you were trained to be afraid of vans. Even in that Mr. T video, I believe the person who tries to abduct the kid and don't go with anybody. He also really, the way he says the name Gloria Vanderbilt, it's a whole other thing. So
maybe seems to that maybe have sort of went away. I mean, it sort of went away in the same time that disco did. So all that sort of sexual license and sort of personal extreme style kind of faded away to some extent as the AIDS era came up and everything else happened.
Is there a connection, Ron, between the CB fad and the van fad? Because
I would imagine at least some vans had CBs. That was your citizen band radio that basically what truckers used to talk to one another. Yeah. My dad had one. He didn't have a van, but he had one in the 70s that he used to communicate with truckers on when we were on like road trips. It was just. Have you ever seen the Jonathan Demme movie, Citizens Band? That's a great movie that I don't think was ever released on DVD. It's just an awesome movie.
No.
But it's like basically a CB radio exploitation movie, the same way The Van is a van exploitation movie.
Okay.
But it's Jonathan Demme, who would later went on to direct, Silence of the Lambs and whatnot. But it's one of his early movies, and it's really great. I don't think it ever was on DVD, but that's a good exploitation movie to hunt down. But I'm sure it overlaps to some degree, but I don't know if, like, the CB was really essential to the van phenomenon.
Right.
I relate it more to, like, disco and stuff. And it also reminds me, I linked to it in one of the links in the article to the episode of the Brady Bunch where Greg Brady finally
tricks
gets
out
his
his
own bedroom.
room, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the first thing he does is turn it into like the lounge lizard disco, which is totally like that's what like a teenage boy in the 70s would totally do. So there's like this like adolescent like fantasy of like flamboyant masculinity going on with the van thing that's like uniquely 70s. And then it kind of faded away. And one thing that's interesting, I should have tried to do some research on this, but I don't know when like vans first became available to the regular consumer as like a regular vehicle that you could purchase, and it might have been the advent of that might have been like 1975 or something, and that kind of probably led to it.
Well, the Volkswagen had the Vanagon, which
Oh well, yeah, the Volkswagen van. Maybe that was one of the first ones, but that's kind of like not the van that's typically customized. The vans that are typically customized are usually like your American, big, like obnoxious-looking American van.
Boxes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a counterculture continuity where, and you see this in your article, where there's the advertisement for the put me into a street van for Dodge is all like hippy dippy and everyone's got long hair and big collars and everything. I do think there's some kind of 60s to 70s connection between the hippie van and then the kind of creeper Matthew McConaughey van.
Matthew McConaughey, geez, just lumping this guy into your child molestation idea here. Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely that's in that period where you're crossing over from kind of deadhead hippie stuff into sort of like glam disco stuff. I think that's probably true. I think that comes across in that movie, The Van, which I mentioned, which is a Crown International Pictures exploitation movie. I really love Crown International. Is one of my favorite 70s movie outfits. Just made all these low-budget movies that I like a lot.
So the next time that we're all together, Ron, can we get together and do a full-length commentary for The Van where we watch it together?
I think we should just watch Crown International, like Van Nuys Boulevard is another great one. Oh, I love that movie too. There's a bunch of really good ones. And I think, just to get off topic, I think when you watch something like Dazed and Confused, the Richard Linklater movie, everyone, when it came out, it was like, oh, it's the American Graffiti for the 90s, and it sort of was, but really, that's kind of like an homage to like the Crown International kind of movies. That's kind of what I think he was going for with that. But yeah, The Van, I mentioned, it's a movie about a kid who, has trouble with the ladies, so he gets the custom van, and he thinks that's going to make his life, he's going to get all the chicks. It doesn't quite turn out that way. And it's got a cool soundtrack with that there's a song called Chevy Van, that I was going to put the lyrics from that song in this blog post, but then I figured that was just too cheesy, so I didn't do it.
Well, you know that Sky will insert them here.
Well, here's a fun van fact that I hadn't thought of until I researched for this episode. Do you know the origin of the word van?
No.
It's completely ridiculous that we don't. That it's just a shortened form of caravan.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Actually,
okay.
Yep.
And caravan itself, much
is
like
a
the town,
model, right? Yeah.
Much like the town where Steve is from, Goleta, comes from an Arabic word. Except Goleta comes, which means ship, comes from the Arabic, from Spain that way. It was actually from Old French, where they took it during the Crusades. So, they heard it in Arabic from people, a caravan, and then they just took that term for a group of desert travelers, and then they applied it to the vehicles, and then they eventually shortened it to van. So I guess that makes sense why the Dodge Caravan is called the Caravan.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, makes sense.
So good. Steve, we've done what we do, okay?
Well,
Ron's told cool stories. I've talked something stupid that no one cares about. What are you going to throw on for us, Steve?
I mean, all I can really say is that all what you guys have just been talking about is what Ron, you always do so well in these, is you kind of put some, kind of random Star Wars merchandise within the bigger context of what's going on in culture around it. So I think that's basically what you guys just did. But I mean, to get into the Star Wars aspect of it, I don't know if we want to talk about the 2001 Project Star Wars van. I think that's where you start to really lead into where Star Wars fits into all of this.
Yeah. So I wanted to, ever since finding this folder at Fluffy/Eddie's house with the Mr. Van stuff in it, I wanted to write something tying together toys based on vans, Star Wars toys, the custom van craze, and then sort of the Mr. Van promotion that no one had ever heard of, I don't think, until I saw that folder, right? So, and then I had hoped, I know Yehuda Kleiman, our friend, had some van magazines that he owned, and I hoped that in one of those magazines there'd be an article about Mr. Van, and that would be like totally manna from heaven, right? It'd be like, oh, there it is, Mr. Van. But the one he had that was most applicable was this one that we scanned for the article, and it's from 1001 Truck and Van Ideas from I don't know what year, 1978 or something, or 77 maybe.
Right around
And,
700, they're really stretching. I got to tell you, they're like try red seats, 708. Try green seats. It's really.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is November 77, so yeah,
November
it's like right
77, yeah.
right in the mix of it, yeah.
And it's just an article about like some guy who he has a Star Wars van, but then on one side it's like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the other side
Right.
Star Wars. So I guess he's got like the high and low of 70s sci-fi on his, or 60s and 70s sci-fi on his van.
Yeah.
But the article really kind of focuses on Star Wars, and it's called The Star Wars Van. And it's just I just included it to just show that, hey, this was a thing, and so much of a thing in the 70s that it was on the covers of magazines, right? So,
Right.
You know, if you were a consumer and you're at your magazine stand, you would see, oh, Star Wars vans are a thing, you know. And since I posted the article, Lance Worth, who's always a valuable commentator on Facebook, he posted some other magazines that he has. No Mr. Van sightings, but just some other ones. You know, so there's multiple magazines from that era that spotlit Star Wars vans, right? And the idea there is just to kind of point out that this was a thing in the culture for this brief period. And because I think right now, and I see this brought up all the time when someone posts like one of the SSP vans, the Kenner vans on Facebook or whatever, people are like, "Oh, this is so lame." Like it's just what's so random? Like, why did Kenner make a van? Well, it's like, well,
Right.
I don't think you realize that at that time, Star Wars vans, custom vans, were like a thing
on the road.
Right.
They were on the road.
And you would have been aware of it, like, because you would have seen it on the magazine, or there may have even been news stories or whatever. So that's the context of those. It's not like it's completely just pulled out of some Kenner exec's butt or something. That there's an actual context to that.
So
Yeah.
Ron, I think I have a pretty big project for you, which I think would fit within some of the work that you've been doing, because it all hints to this fact that the vans might be the first example of blank but Star Wars. So, like, whatever happens since 1977, whatever the biggest cultural trend is, there is that but Star Wars. What I'd like to see you do, Ron, is go to the release year of every Star Wars movie and pick one item of collectible. Take, for instance, 1999. I'm not going with the Taco Bell cup toppers. I'm going with Episode 1 Pogs, right? Which must have existed, right? Like the things that don't make sense, or like Last Jedi fidget spinners, like those definitely existed, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that it's a valuable lesson that you're teaching us here about the SSP vans. Those were completely relevant. The people who saw them on the store knew exactly what they were. They were of the moment. I don't know, Ron.
Yeah.
What do you think of that assignment?
Yeah, I guess it sort of makes sense. I don't know if I'd find Pogs and figure spinners nearly as interesting as vans, to be honest. It's way too Todd Chamberlain to get into writing about Star Wars Pogs.
Right.
He probably has like boxes of those.
Okay, but then what's what's the equivalent for 1980 and 1983? You know, that's what I wonder.
I don't know.
Like, what's the
thing
most
that I
1980 thing?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about it.
That's a good
Latch
question.
Hook rugs or something.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe Lee Ward's Latch Hook rugs. Those are pretty 1980. But the thing that's interesting to me about the vans as a product, and I mentioned it a little, is just that the idea wasn't that most Star Wars toys, like you buy a snowspeeder or you know, pick a 70s toy like the Imperial Troop Transport, even though it's not in the movie, the idea is that you're going to interface with some fantastical element from the Star Wars universe.
Right.
And the things about the vans is that when kids played with those, they weren't intended really to be like, this is Darth Vader driving this van, and he's going to kill the rebels by running over them. Like, that wasn't the
By running
play
over
pattern.
trash
It was
barrels.
more like,
Right, yeah,
So
they
there's
still
more
have
like-
the oil drums and the pylons, not
Yeah.
the proton torpedoes and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
I
right.
think the kid was more intended to think, like, this is my Uncle Charlie's badass van, and I'm going to run over some pylons with it, and it just happens to have Star Wars on the side, because Star
Right.
Wars is awesome. Like,
Right.
So it was like, there's like a contemporary play pattern to them, and it's like so contemporary that as I mentioned in the article, like Kenner released an SSP non-Star Wars van set the same exact year, and it's basically the same product, right? It just doesn't have the Star Wars graphics.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And so SSP, that sounds for what? Is it supersonic power, right? So
yeah.
What is the
power?
What was the conceit here? Like you pulled like a ripcord kind of thing and they went? I haven't actually played with any of this before.
Gyro in there, and when you put a ripcord inside of it and pull it, the ripcord has like teeth on it. It hooks up with a gear that spins that gyro, and when you connect, and then so you're holding the van in your hand, you put the ripcord in, you rip it out, and then the gyro starts spinning on the bottom of the van. Not the wheels, but the gyro in the middle of it. And then when you put it on the floor, it just takes off.
Yeah.
And it flies really far across the floor, and it has sparks.
All right.
Steve,
this sounds.
You've never played with one of these?
I not a van. I've had similar toys, but not a van per se. I can see some van races at a future archive party being a thing.
Prior to $6 Million Man, SSP must have been like the number one boys' toy category item that Kenner had, like in the 70s, because they just made a ton of SSP stuff.
Yeah.
And then, they started getting into the licenses with $6 Million Man and whatnot. But SSP is like the last push of old school Kenner that wasn't really licensing stuff.
So, another thing about the SSP toys, I think this would have been George Lucas's favorite toy. Right? Because you look at the name of the set. So just to make it clear, there are two different vans. There's the Heroes van, which is white and has a nice picture of Luke doing a jig, looking at the binary sunset. Leia, with her arms there, and Chewbacca way bigger than Han Solo, who's out of proportion. You have 3PO there, and then you have the black van, which is just Vader. It's all good art. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But they call this 2-pack the drag race of the galaxy. And if we go back to the previous George Lucas movie, American Graffiti, again, going back to that, George Lucas did drag racing. That's what he liked. He likes speed, right? He doesn't care about wizards.
You're right. That is a very George Lucas product. I'd be curious, what his reaction was at the time, if he even bothered to notice. But you would imagine that he would have appreciated it to some extent, because certainly he likes racing.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned in here they had a 12% markup based compared to the other SSP vans that Kenner was offering.
Yeah, and Kenner owes a chunk to Lucasfilm or to George Lucas or Fox, whatever it was, for every Star Wars episode. I meant to go back and ask Steve Sansweet or look in his book, what exactly the contract with, the licensing agreement called for, and I don't know if it was exactly 12%. I wouldn't be shocked, though. But, yeah, it's right around 12 for both the single vans and the set, compared to the Kenner's non-Star Wars versions of those products.
The one with the shark or the dinosaur on it, yeah.
Yeah, right. The dinosaur is 12% discount.
Right.
And another thing, too, reading the copy here, it is important, all these other things that they have. I think this is part of what made all this era fun, was just all the terminology. So it says that the white van features headers, mag wheels, and custom grills.
Yep.
This has got mag wheels. Good. Because if we didn't have mag wheels, frankly, it wouldn't be worth the 12%.
I know when I was a kid and it wasn't vans, it was more like skateboards and BMX bikes. The terminology was important. Even if you didn't know what it meant, it had to have that item, because you heard your older cousin talking about it or whatever.
Do you know what my example for that was? Indy trucks. So I didn't know that Indy was a brand that made trucks. I thought that there were trucks and that there were also things called Indy trucks, which were different than regular trucks made by Indy. So I was always like, no, I don't have Indy trucks. Who made your trucks? Indy.
All that jargon. And I do think there is that whole, okay, you're trying to appeal to 7-year-olds, but it's they've heard their uncles talking about this or older brothers or something, so it's you need to slide in those words so it's cool to them.
Yeah, and it does all just really speak to much less much less cared for time, a much more wild child. The whole thing, it does feel like maybe you'd have an uncle or an older brother who would let you do this, and it could just be that.
Yeah,
too,
probably
just,
let you take a hit off the beer, and nobody's looking, all that stuff.
Yeah, all that neglect, which people like to pretend was awesome. Wow!
Yeah.
So we've just barely gotten into the van. So we have. So this is the problem, Ron, is that you're actually doing something that you do in the article, which is what's needed, which is we're talking about toys and we're talking about vans and we're talking about toy vans and vans that are toys. So it's all quite confusing. So
right.
Okay, so I think we have most of the stuff we need to say about the SSP. Now, do you have a complete SSP collection, Ron, for Star Wars vans?
I think I have just about an example of every Kenner product release. So yeah,
Right.
Variations aside.
Okay, so there's just the Star Wars Heroes, the Darth Vader, and then the 2-pack.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, those are they released the single vans, a white Heroes and a black in single packs, and then there was the van set, which is actually one of the rarer Kenner items.
Yeah.
And that's both vans together with pylons and oil drums.
You gotta have the pylons and oil drums. Yeah.
Now,
The only Star Wars product I'm aware of that comes with pylons, like the Orange Road pylons.
Now, what do those go for, Ron, or what have they gone for?
Oh, yeah, I guess it depends on the condition, obviously, but I would say a nice one is $1,200 or so.
Okay,
Wow.
for the
There's not huge
the
demand,
2-pack.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's
it's
before
rare,
this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's probably not as rare as like X-Wing Aces, but it's you don't see them that often.
Was there ever a point where, like, X-Wing Aces used to be the hot toy to get if you were collecting as an adult? Was there ever a time where the vans were hot?
Sort of, I guess. I mean, I think it's like if you were to ask a big Star Wars collector in 1993, what are the really rarest Kenner items, they would probably say the headset radio, X-Wing Aces, the R2-D2 radio, and the van set might be named in there. That's certainly one of those rarer items from the early days of Star Wars. It just wasn't around that much.
Wow.
I don't know if hot is the right word, but I think it was recognized as a rare item. I know, I bought a lot of stuff from an old-time collector. It was one of the biggest collectors from the 70s and 80s. This is back in the late 90s, and he was very impressed with his van set. So I think if he's an example that you take him as an example, I would say, yeah, that's one of those items that older collectors would have recognized.
Now, did you buy his van set from him?
No, actually, our friend Fluffy bought it. I remember being surprised that he ponied up the cash to buy it.
Wow.
And obviously, the price this is talking about 1997.
Uh-huh.
And the price he paid is probably not that much below what it would go for now.
Wow.
So I mean, it probably was like $600 or $700, and like I said, now it's probably $1,200. So that's probably even when you consider inflation.
Now, is there any more story to this guy whose collection you bought out in the 70s or 80s?
Yeah, that's a very long story. Maybe for another podcast.
Okay, we're gonna have to put that down.
Yeah, I bought
Steve.
a lot of this guy's
Yeah.
stuff. He's an old-time collector.
Yeah.
That does sound like a story for another day.
Unfortunately, it sounds more interesting than whatever else we'd be saying, Steve. But it's okay.
That's not true. It's not necessarily true.
Not today,
I think,
but our next
yeah.
episode, we have to have him on for that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so
you should do an episode where just about big finds or something. That would be a good one. Just have people on to tell stories about mega finds or something.
but
Todd
like
Chamberlain.
yeah,
Good-
mega
good
finds
stories.
before 1999.
Well, yeah, way back.
I
way
like
back
that.
find.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not that mega finds now aren't a big deal, and they are, but I feel like we've talked about
Yeah,
a
just
lot
people
of
have heard of them. To go
Yeah.
way back is interesting. Like
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
big collections like that people found in the 90s or whatever.
Part of our history series, Sky.
Yeah, this unofficial history series that we're getting going here. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I actually get excited about talking about. Okay, then you also have an advertisement here, which Ron, I know you, and I know that you included this advertisement with these vans and with this only because you wanted to show the turn-on game. And that was
Yeah, actually. I was like, do I need to include this? And I'm looking closer at it. I'm like, what is this turn. I was like, I need to include this. This is just
See,
too weird.
when I was reading this the first time, getting ready to, I had to stop and I had to call Tessa over. She's like, you need to look at this. This is ridiculous.
So
the
what
copy
is
for this?
the turn-on game?
I meant to go look it up in the catalog and then to see if I could find an old commercial from it on YouTube, but I haven't, and I think the fact that I haven't is just some sort of like subconscious response of mine that I just kind of want to retain the mystery of it. I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to leave that as a weird thing that I don't quite understand. But it's just but the whole thing is bizarre. The turn-on game, the name of it, the image of this guy with the foot fetish grabbing this girl by the ankle, the whole thing is just bizarre. I don't know what to say.
Sky, I think you got to read the copy for this.
Okay, 1 second. I will. I am
Okay.
just 1 second. PayPal.com. We recognize you on this device. So automatically checkout. Pay now. Okay, great. So I just bought it. So I will be getting it in the next couple weeks. So we are going to be playing the 1977 turn-on game. Thank you, Ron, for helping me once again.
I'm pretty sure that Matthew McConaughey, when he was driving around with his child molester van in the 80s, probably when you open the van door, he had a version of the turn-on game just sitting right there.
So it appears to be some kind of Twister-like game, and the copy here has a picture of a boy and a girl, and they both have their hands on this little machine, and then they're touching each other's, like she's touching his nose and he's touching her foot. So it's called Turn-On Game. New all-family action game. Set timer. Follow instructions on cards. When skin contact is made and buzzer sounds, you've scored. Fun for all ages. So that's what it says. When skin contact is made and buzzer sounds, you've scored.
The funny thing about it is that you get the sense that someone at Kenner was like, okay, we need to market this to the Randy teen market, and we want you to use, like, the copy needs to be suggestive. Right? One, it's called the turn-on game, and then two, it's like involves skin contact and scoring. It's just, the whole thing is a little bit just like, wow, this is really weird.
Yep. Well, it's made by Kenner, and it's definitely on its way. I just bought it. It was $25 plus $8 shipping, so not too bad. I got it sealed.
Not bad. Yeah.
Yep. That's on the box. It says follow cards, make skin contact. When it buzzes, you've scored. So we'll have to see how it works, and if it works out, I think Steve will play it at the next archive party. Of course, that's the idea. Is we have to play Turn On, because who doesn't want to touch other collectors' faces and noses?
So weird.
Oh God.
I might regret that purchase, Steve.
Yeah, I'm already regretting it on your behalf. All right, so in that ad, the vans are also featured, right?
Yeah,
so
who cares about the vans? We care about the turn-on game.
Yeah.
Everyone goes nuts for Daddy Saddle. You got to get in on the turn-on game hype. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna play the role of Yehuda here, and I'm gonna get everyone going. The bubble gun is dead. The Daddy Saddle is dead. The new Kenner hotness, like I'm gonna say it like Stefan. The new Kenner hotness is turn-on game. You know, it's that game where you find your sister and you stick your finger inside of her ear, and the buzzer goes, and you've scored. Okay.
Yep. That's the idea of the turn-on game.
Yeah.
This is another 70s thing, though, Ron. Another 60s and 70s thing is how often, because the word turn on now basically has one meaning, but it used to have all these other meanings. You know, it used to mean like the Beatles, right? Like, I'd love to turn you on, right? Like, that was about like getting you to do drugs. And then it's also about, drop out, tune in, and turn on or whatever. It was also about, like, being connected to the culture. And then it was also about sexual excitement. So this is another relic of the 70s, because I don't think turn on really means erotic turn on, but it's shed all these other meanings.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think the game was intending to open your mind or anything. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're right though. It certainly had more meanings back then.
Oh man.
Okay, so then the question is, let's stay in 77 before we go to 80, right? Like let's kind of jump ahead in Ron's awesome article and get to the insane Star Wars special van Pendaflex from Eddie Fluffy. By the way, I'm upset that Eddie doesn't want to be called Fluffy anymore. It really bugs me, but it's okay.
Well, it's better than he wanted to be called the Shadow for a while, so it's better than the Shadow. That's just way too stupid.
Yes.
Yeah, see, this is what really, yeah. I mean, this is all interesting, but this folder, yeah, this is some awesome stuff.
This is from January 78, and it's about 1978 New York Toy Fair. So just summarize this, Ron. What happened with vans at the 1978 Toy Fair?
Yeah, well, I guess some context. Our friend Eddie has basically like portable file drawers that are basically filled with original Kenner files from a certain division within Kenner, right? So it's like going through them, you can pull out like, oh, here's the file from 1978 of this and that, and it's pretty wild. I wrote some blog posts a while back about display production numbers, like store display production numbers.
Yeah.
And that's where that came from, right? So going through these, I was like, Ed, do you realize you have like these this paperwork which shows like how many Collect All 32 signs were made in 1980? It's like, oh yeah, really? You know, yeah. And it was similar. Like I was down there. Oh, jeez. It was before the pandemic, so I guess 2 years ago, and it was Yehuda and me, and we spent a few hours down there. And I went through there, and I just was like taking photos, and I just took photos of all the van stuff because I'm like, I don't know when I'll see this stuff again. I just want to save this, and I can remember it. And you know, and then so recently I just sent him a message. I'm like, hey man, could you mind if I use these in this article? And he's like, I don't have that. I was like, yeah, you do. Go back and look in your folders. And he's like, really? LOL. So like, yeah, he went back and took some better photos for me. But he has a folder, yeah, that's like just in the article. There's a folder, a picture of the folder that he sent me. Just says a Star Wars Special Van, 1978, and it basically contains paperwork and photos related to a proposal made by an outside entity, aka Mr. Van, to Kenner, to do two things. And the two things were, one, drive the, quote, original Star Wars van to Toy Fair for 1978, presumably as like a display model for their showroom, right?
Right.
And two, the second thing was to supply Kenner with an unlimited number of miniature vans, custom painted to spec for use as an in-store promotion and I guess a giveaway potentially for retailers. So those are the two proposals that this company, Mr. Van, made to Kenner. And you know, the paperwork just consists of that proposal along with some notes from the Kenner folks regarding, like, you know, their reactions to it.
Yeah, I mean, so that on its own is awesome, but then there are photos too, which is just like, that's what just puts us over the top.
Right. Yeah, so there's
so these photos are from Toy Fair.
No, they didn't. The proposal
Kenner
was
rejected
Kenner,
it,
and
right?
They didn't do either thing, so they decided not to do it. So I think these photos were sent to Kenner just to show them what the original Star Wars van looked like and what the minivan looks like. And so, you know, the photos are like, there's the life-size Star Wars van, which obnoxiously, I'm sure it wasn't that they're calling it the original Star Wars van, but I'm sure it isn't. It's just their title for it. And it's like they have the van at a van show, and it's just kind of showing what it looks like. And I'm sure they're using it as a model to promote their custom van business. And then they also had the minivan, which is like I suppose it's like a third of the size of an actual van. And it must have been custom built by them.
It is so
I don't
cool.
know if it's on like a rider mower.
This thing is amazing.
Like a rider mower frame or something, and but it's like basically a van that looks like, I don't know if it's gas powered or what, but it's got like rider mower tires, and it's like just a miniature van that's small but big enough for a kid to crawl inside of, and they have like a model painted up with the Luke and Leia, Hildebrandt / Young, logo on it, or iconography on it. And,
it's just basically a miniature of what he's calling the original Star, like the full size van. Yeah.
So my sense is that Mr. Van was a company that did custom vans, and they also sold these minivans probably as whatever, like go buy your kid a minivan. It must have been super expensive in the 70s, but they must have made these, and they painted one up in a Star Wars motif, and they toured that around with their original Star Wars van to van shows. And then they had the bright idea of, like, maybe they heard that Kenner was making vans, custom vans,
right?
And so they were like, hey, we'll supply you with as many custom vans, as many minivans as you want for $800 a pop,
right?
And you can use them as like an in-store promotion. So that was the whole idea.
Can you imagine if those existed?
Oh my God!
Well, at least one was made because it's a photo, so it could be out there somewhere.
No, but I mean, if
they
that
made
was
them
a
for
standard
stores,
thing,
that would have been wild.
Yeah, if that was like a standard thing where like there were 50 still in existence, those would go for like $20,000. Those would be like famous Grail items. Yeah, I bet that would make SSP go up.
Yeah, I mean, presumably if Kenner did it, they would have painted them to match their SSP vans, I guess. So that would have been pretty rad to have something like that. But yeah, they didn't do it. The Kenner notes on the thing just say like not interested, and as I mentioned in the article, like they would have had to get clearance through Lucasfilm, and the offer was made in like January, right, mid-January, and Toy Fair's in mid-February, so it was like a month turnaround.
He was really hoping.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure, Lucas would probably be like, okay, these guys, Mr. Van is out there going to van shows and promoting his Star Wars van, and has like Chewbacca making appearances at his van shows and whatnot.
I figured that, Chewbacca had to have been a paid hand of Mr. Van.
Yeah, and Mr. Van is not a Star Wars licensee or anything, so I don't know if Kenner's even like, okay, I'm not going to run this by Lucasfilm because there's obviously issues here. But yeah, Mr. Van, did make a stab at the big time and made the offer to Kenner here.
I think it's probably you're right. It's safe to say that there's this group photo of some employees of Mr. Van Inc. and then a guy that's not wearing the uniform that's standing on the left side that has the blue suit and the sunglasses. That is definitely Mr. Van. I think it's pretty safe to say.
I don't know. He's at least spiritually Mr. Van. It hit on me after I wrote this that I was like, oh good, he's the guy dressed as Chewbacca. He's just after he got out of the Chewbacca outfit, he just put on that leisure suit.
Yes.
Like hanging out there.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, it's one of those things like, I've never heard of that before. I doubt anybody has even looked in that folder since the 70s, probably, or the 80s, and it's just one of those things.
Does Eddie keep these file cabinets in a cold, dry place?
Here comes the archivist.
I'm getting scared. Oh, this.
He didn't even remember he had it. So.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, it would have been awesome. I mean, just a cool thing, and I'm sure Kenner had tons of proposals. In Steve Sansweet's book, From Concept to Screen to Collectible, I want to say he has a bunch of weird proposals that were made to Lucasfilm, like a proposal to open like a Star Wars themed bar, a chain of bars or something like that. I'm sure just all sorts of weird proposals were made, but you have to find the evidence of them to really write about them, and it's kind of cool to find these relics and bring it to light so people are aware of it.
Yeah.
Now the real question is, Steve, do we just stop here in the 70s, or do we revisit the van? Because we talked about the vans in the NPC model episode.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the model kit blog.
We should probably mention them just a little bit. That there are 3 more vans that are radically different, and were just made for as model kits. Still very 70s.
Yes.
R2-D2 has a cool dome. Like, it seems like they put a lot more energy into making the sculpt different, as opposed to just being, the same van with a different painting.
Right. These are a little more spacey. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the R2, I think that that R2D2 dome is like made specially for that van. But I think the base vans from MPC, their MPC model kits, are just recycled from their regular line, right?
Okay.
And just do them. And like I said, I think the Vader artwork is really rad. I like that a lot.
Yeah, the Vader artwork, that's... Okay, here's a question. Is this the first time Vader's using his cape in a badass way?
Yeah.
He's like swinging his cape around, and the red from his lightsaber is creating like making it glow.
It's like a lance almost, like, yeah.
And then pulling
and
up
the Luke van
rear.
is just terrible.
Yes. So the Luke van is bizarrely bad. It is artistically bad.
Right. In every sense.
It's like he's like scrunched in there, and he's got like the blaster in a weird position because it has to get over the wheel. It's got an X-wing flying into his neck.
Yeah.
I like that on the Luke one. That's the only one where you see the back of the van with the really cheesy "May the Force be with you" text on the back door. I mean, that would be the one that Luke has. I bet Vader's doesn't say that.
Somebody at MPC is like, "Oh, we need to spice this up a little bit. Why don't we just put May the Force be with you on the back?" Oh, great.
And then the way that it looks, it's like there's a blaster bolt coming from his gun, which is the same color as the speed lines behind the X-wing that's flying into his neck. So it looks like it's just one weird, like he's shooting out an X-wing that's flying around and hitting him in the back of his own head. Just, I mean, R2D2 is in 70s resplendence with his red and yellow coloring behind him. Vader looks like a badass, and Luke looks like, if you've ever seen somebody who has never smoked a cigarette and then you hand them a cigarette, the way they hold it, it looks like they have like 8 fingers and none of them are on the right hand. Or like the way my dad types when on a phone, where it feels as though they're like his hands are like the size of like a baguette, and he's like sitting like there's some kind of weird like inability. Like no one has ever looked more ill-equipped to hold a gun.
Yeah, but hey, it still includes the glow-in-the-dark decals like the other two, so that's something, I guess.
Yeah, but those are the, you could complete your custom Star Wars van set. Well, it's pretty tough if you want to get the Kenner van, the double pack. Yeah. Yeah, but if you want to, it's not too hard to get the individual NPC and Kenner ones. And,
okay.
5. And I would say long reviled within the collecting community, but somebody should appreciate them more because I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah, well, the article definitely accomplishes that. We'll have the same effect. They'll be like the Topps cards and Jonathan's.
Right. I have my Luke rookie van.
Yes. I want to go on a weird kind of controversial rant here, which is I partly blame the fact that R2-D2, Luke Skywalker, and Darth Vader collectors aren't cool enough. If there was a Chewbacca van, do you have any idea? I would have it like in an acrylic case. I would never, ever shut up about that damn thing. Like, it would be such a cool, funky thing. Like, R2, 3PO, Vader, Luke collectors, they just don't know how good they have it. And they just,
kind of missed an opportunity not to make a Chewbacca van. As I mentioned in the article, if there's one Star Wars character who'd be in the custom vans, it's Chewbacca.
It's absolutely a fact. Yeah. No, you're right.
Aside from possibly Rick Ollier, whoever you pronounce his name. The little droid did it guy. Yeah. That guy's got a love van.
Now, is there a Rick Ollie Pog? That's the real question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I have to look that up. Rick Ollie Pog. Looks like there aren't many great matches for your search. Oh wait, did you mean I misspelled Rick Ollie? Oh yeah, there is a Rick Ollie Pog. You know it, baby. Ah, sweet.
Isn't it?
It's number 1. Wait a minute. That's number 1 for the episode 1 Pogs. That is the rookie Pog. For all of episode 1 is the Rick Ollie Pog.
All right, there it is. There
and it's
it
made
is.
by
what
Pizza
is
Hut.
what is the rookie Tazo? That's the key question. Remember Tazos that were like Pogs but only better?
Yeah, there were Star Wars Tazos too, weren't there?
Yes.
Oh, there has to be.
Well,
Yeah.
that was an adventure and a half.
That was. Yeah.
I think we've talked about vans.
I don't know if we were just talking about this whole Mr. Van promotion, if I would have tied it in with the ride-on speeder bike promotion from the 80s, but as I wrote about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, obviously this is the same thing as the speeder bike promotion that Kenner and Huffy did in 1984, and I was aware of that, but somehow it wasn't at the front of my mind or my consciousness. But yeah,
Okay, so
I
explain
don't
this
know
to me.
if Mr. Right, so in the 84, Kenner, as part of their attempt to keep Star Wars in the public consciousness, especially with young folks, because Star Wars was out of theaters by 84, they had a promotion where they partnered with Huffy to make a ride-on pedal bike speeder bike, right? So it's like, it looks like the speeder bike toy, but you can sit on it and pedal it like a big wheel. And they distributed these to stores, and the stores had to run a promotion, and then the stores could do what they wanted with the speeder bike, right? So they could get, a lot of them did giveaways or raffles where they gave away the speeder bike, which is pretty much exactly what Mr. Van was proposing to Kenner,
right?
With the ride-on minivan, right? So it's almost exactly the same promotion. What is that? 6 years later, it's a child-sized ride-on item. It's mimicking a Kenner product. It was used for retail outlets as like a display, but then there was also a giveaway component. So it's just, I almost wonder if someone at Kenner didn't steal Mr. Van's idea and just totally rob him of all the credit and the money associated with it and just go with the speeder bike and Huffy instead.
Wait, so Huffy never made an actual Star Wars item for sale?
No, it was just for Kenner, for them to do this store promotion thing.
So it's just for Kenner. So is there any kind of like known affiliation between Huffy and Kenner? Is there some kind of corporate? Is just
they just partnered for that. I think Kenner needed someone who had experience making ride-on toys, and they partnered with Huffy for that.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any other Kenner Huffy tie-in.
Huffy wasn't part of the fun group.
Right. So there was no definitive way to figure out what to do with these things. Like just literally just once the promotion was done, whoever had them had them.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at I did a scan of one of the retailer promotional items that went out, and it just says free promotion and speeder bike ride-on toy for your store. And I want to say that, there was probably a deal just similar to what Mr. Van was suggesting, where like the store, to get the bike, had to buy a certain amount of product and probably display the speeder bike in the store. But I'm pretty sure that the store they could decide on their own how to dispense the speeder bike at the end of the promotion, right? So, and I know a lot did like raffles or giveaways. Yeah. And there was also, I think Kenner may have formalized it to some degree, because there was a store display that may have, I'd have to go look at the store display, may have had a component where you put your name in or something.
Yeah, I feel like I'm thinking the store display has Luke in his poncho on there. I think I know what you're talking about.
There was a whole thing, but I've heard from different collectors that the stores did different things as far as giving those away. But it was the bike was provided to them by Kenner. They may have had to pay, but I think the main thing was that they had to buy a certain amount of product to get it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's really similar to the Mr. Van idea.
Yeah,
so it's like
it's
the
so
scheme
similar that it's almost hard to deny the connection. And it sort of reminds me of, speak of old time stories about fines. Actually James Gallo knew a guy in the New Jersey area in the 90s who was a collector, and he was a wealthier guy who had a business that he was a concessions business. And I visited him with Chris Dragoulias and Michael Mensinger, and I think James, in the 90s, and this guy had a basement filled with toys. Like, he had, the collection wouldn't be mind-blowing to a lot of people today because it didn't have, like, rare items, but he had just, like, mind-blowing amount of stuff, like loose figures. And I remember he had, like, against a wall, he must have had like 50 Chewbacca bandolier straps that he bought on clearance and just stacked up against the wall. And he just had tons and tons of loose figures. And he would set up all the loose figures, and he was like a gamer, right? So he'd invented this game where you could like do roll dice and stuff that like have like battles with your Star Wars figures, right? And this was in the early days of the Power of the Force 2 line, and he had put together a whole presentation like for Hasbro. I think presented it to them, like to purchase this idea from him, where they would buy his game, and then they would sell with the figures instructions to how to play this like role play game with your action figures, like with dice and stuff, to do like battles and things.
Man.
And he thought it would be a way that Hasbro could promote their figures, and they turned him down. But then, like 2 years later, they came out with their own version of his idea, but it was different. Right? So
it's the Mr. Van entrepreneurship just shafted again.
And this guy was incensed, man. He was just like, I'm going to sue them and all this because they stole my idea. But really, there's no law, I don't think. I don't know what the legal barrier is for like how similar it has to be to like be able to sue. But they took it and they changed it enough where they didn't have to pay him. And he just was insistent that they stole his idea. But I would imagine if Mr. Van saw the speeder bike promotion in 1984, he probably felt the same way. Right? If they stole his idea.
I guess the funny thing about the speeder bike, I think I've always got it mixed up with the swing that's a speeder bike. So I've just never had it in my head as two different items. So now a lot of things make more sense.
Yeah, that was sold to. You could buy that in the store. It was really rare, but you could buy that. The speeder bike was not a retail item.
Yeah,
because I remember the speeder bike is one of my favorite Steve Sansweet stories. Because he said in Concept of Scream to Collectible, this is an item that had escaped him, and he said he'll never do that again because people came out of the woodwork, trying to.
Oh no, you're thinking of the bike. Like there's also a regular bike.
That was the bike?
Yeah. Is it Huffy? It may have been Huffy. But there is a Star Wars bicycle that Steve Sansweet wanted, and he wrote about, I think it's Starlog magazine.
Oh, okay.
And then
I guess I got the story
people
totally
offered it
wrong.
to him for like crazy. That was just a traditional bike. That was not the speeder bike.
Okay.
And that actually ties into my fine story that we talked about earlier that I'm going to have to save for another episode.
Oh my God,
that's that guy had one of those bikes.
The triple teaser here.
So teaser.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you about this Huffy ride-on speeder bike thing. I think I would have had one. I mean, definitely Yehuda would have had one if he had seen it as a kid. But I think I would have ended up with one. I think my dad would have managed to, like, not necessarily pay for it, but have been insistent enough, because he was the kind of guy who would always go home, like, with the box that the toys came in, like the shipping box and stuff. He had that kind of sense. And boy, I wish that we had seen this, because this looks like that would have been my favorite toy ever. I mean, Big Wheels are the coolest. The speeder bike was the coolest. But
did you have a bowl cut like the kid in the ad?
Oh, did I? I had such a bowl cut. They didn't even use a bowl. They just freehand it, and they were able to get it perfectly circular. Yeah, I had the most rad bowl cut. I looked like this might actually be me. But
I was going to say, yeah.
But the bigger question, Ron, is on this ad copy for toy sellers, it says additional traffic to your store to check secret symbols.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you look at the store display that Kenner, because I think when they sent you the speeder bike, they sent you a display to put it on. There's like some contest where you had to match symbols and you had to come back to the store. Like, so it was like the whole idea is like you keep having to come back to the store to check your symbols in later weeks or something like that. And if you match your symbols, you win Kenner toys or something like that. Yeah.
I think that, to me, Sky, this sounds like whenever we get to Luke Poncho, I think we need to do a full investigation of this ride-on speeder bike promotion, because there's so much other.
I've been meaning to write like a blog post about it because there's quite a bit. Quite a bit that goes into it.
I mean, Ron, for someone with as much attention to detail as you have, the fact that you don't have the secret symbols down cold, I mean, that's your mission. I mean, forget the pogs. I mean, don't forget the fidget spinners, but forget the pogs.
There's like the symbols are like characters or something. Like each character is like in a little circle, and you had to match them, and some goofy promotion that someone came up with. And the whole idea is just to keep you coming back to the store to whatever.
Spend more money.
More crap at Kmart.
Yeah. Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm glad you know what, Ron? I was all proud of myself for having read the whole article, but I totally skipped that part of the speeder bike. I thought it was just a joke that the kids looked the same, so I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm just gonna move on.
Dang, he's like, I read the article except for the whole last third of it.
57 minutes earlier. I really read it. Like, I read it very carefully.
William Shakespeare. 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 William Shakespeare.